A League of Their Own, the series, is finally out, and this is one we've been anticipating for a while now. And we were so excited to see all of the diversity that the story deserves, especially the queerness. But did we love it? We are going to be giving our full, honest review in this video, so let's dive in. Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, I'm Steph.
I'm Katie. We are a married lesbian couple from Vancouver and the creators of Let's See the World. We post tons of queer travel, queer pop culture, and just queer personal life, marriage stuff on our channel. So if you're into that, be sure to subscribe.
All right, to kick things off, a little bit of backstory. Personally, I am a League of Their Own super fan.
Well, thanks for that extra special glimpse into her life.
Yeah, you really are.
loved the movie. Still love it. Like, we literally watch it multiple times a year. Still, I have my Rockford Peaches colors on because Peach for life.
We've also been, haven't we been
We've
to
been
Rockford
to
Peaches?
Rockford, and
Yeah.
I ran the bases.
So we love the film.
Yeah.
We were obviously very, very excited to hear that a series was getting made. And also very excited to see sort of the new take on it because of course the original film is amazing, but it is also a product of its time. It came out in the early 90s.
92.
So there are certain things that are missing from it, namely the queerness of it all.
Yeah. And not just missing, like, by our standards now.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people might think, oh, they're adding in these queer storylines because modern times. But there were so many queer relationships in that league. The actual history of the league, like, you can see it. Like, you go back and you read about some of the women that played, and they were all hooking up.
Yeah, so it was specifically left out of the film.
Yes.
I have seen a lot of sort of conservatives reviewing the series and saying, like, yeah, why did they make it so queer? And like you said, it wasn't like it was injected into the story. Like, it is a historical story. Like, this actually happened.
Yeah.
And when it actually happened, a lot of these women were queer. And that's just the truth. And so when the film was made, they specifically left that out, which is really shitty, but also it was made in 92, so I get it, you know?
The other thing the film left out, they made a small nod to it, of
Very
course,
small,
but they did leave out the fact that Black women were excluded from even being able to try out for the league. And also, there really wasn't any representation of Latine women. And so we do see that now in the film that there were women playing in the league, and that is historically accurate. And that was another thing that was not shown in the film.
Yeah, so the series obviously tackles things showing like the diversity and the representation that the film never did. And for that, obviously, I am so excited that it got made. It's so important that people get to see this story like through a new lens. That being said, overall, I would say we were underwhelmed.
We were underwhelmed specifically with the queer storytelling.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that and explain why.
Yeah. So we are diving into our review now. Spoiler alert, if you have not watched the full series, I mean, it only came out, you know, like a week ago, so understandable if you haven't. But if you don't want spoilers, don't watch this full review because we are going to be talking about all 8 episodes because we watched them all immediately.
And we're going to be dissecting. So we're going into it.
Spoiler alert.
There will be spoilers.
Yes.
This is your warning. So of course we're going to be diving into all of the queer themes and the queer storytelling, but I think we need to start with the baseball because this is a series about baseball.
Girls can't play ball!
Or so
it
I
should
thought. Yeah, I mean, the original film, like, it's a sports movie at the end of the day, and you always say,
it is one of
like,
the best sports movies. Like,
yeah, and, like, for women's sports movies, like, we can even barely name, like, a couple
League of Their
others.
Own, Bend It Like Beckham, Love and Basketball. I'm out.
Right? Like, it's so rare. Like, that's what makes the original film so special, and so I think, and Steph's an athlete as well, so like I think you had really high hopes for like the sports of it all, like. And I will
say that I am probably more critical than most when it comes to seeing sports played in film and television. But it's the kind of thing that I can see and look for. And the baseball in the movie, Penny Marshall had those women playing for months. They trained and practiced and that baseball was legit. They mostly did their own stunts. Like, most of that footage was them actually playing.
Yeah.
And it was really well done. And
Those
they
are the
were
best
good.
scenes. Those are the best scenes in the movie.
Those
they're
hype
so
me up.
exciting.
I get goosebumps when I watch them. I just
Yeah.
want to go out and like play some sports and like that's what a sports movie should do, you know?
Yeah.
It should get you excited about the sport.
And there's a lot of baseball in the film.
There's
like,
so
it's
much
a
baseball in the
baseball
film.
movie. It is like that's the whole thing.
Yeah,
and it's
the
really
heart.
well done.
It's the heart of the film. You can
Yeah.
see the passion that those players have for their sport,
Yeah.
and that is so key.
Yeah.
It's like baseball is a character in the film, and I really felt like just the screen time that the baseball got in the series was very minimal.
Yeah.
And also, if you've seen it, you may be wondering why the baseball looks so weird. It's because it's CGI. They're not
Yeah.
actually throwing the ball. They're not actually hitting the ball. It's all computer generated. They speed up the ball when it's
Yeah.
thrown. So basically it looks fake.
Yeah,
And
because
in
it
making
is
it
fake.
look fake, it makes it look like women can't play baseball.
Right.
And that's my biggest critique of it. They had the actors practice and learn how to play baseball, but
Yeah.
I feel like that was all thrown away when they decided to do computer generated
Yeah.
because they didn't get to actually like showcase those skills that they had. And I bet they're decent ball players.
Totally.
But we just don't get to see that. And for me, the CGI ruins the baseball
It really
completely.
takes you out of it, right? It just, I don't know, it didn't feel believable anymore, and it just didn't feel like a sports movie anymore. And like,
It also didn't seem like it was played at that time. Having like a
Right.
modern filming technique or a modern
Right.
computer generated technique
right.
takes you out of that time.
That's actually another sort of critique we have overall. We will dive into the queer stuff, but I feel like we have other thoughts too.
Yeah, that
But
one was
it
a big
is-
one actually.
Yeah, it is just kind of like how modern it felt, and like it is a period piece, but even just with like the writing, just like the language that they
Yeah.
use, like just the way the characters talk to each other, it was too modern for the time. It didn't
Yeah.
feel like the 1940s, and that really took me out of it too.
The dialogue was very out of place. It was very
Yeah.
anachronistic.
But like not in a way that was like a deliberate choice, like in the way that like
Dickinson?
Dickinson does it, where it's like that's the point. It's like they're speaking as if it's like modern times, but it's set in a different time, and it's like very deliberate. It's like a very
Yeah.
deliberate choice. This didn't feel like that, so it just felt off. I don't know.
Because the other aspects of the series were very specific in making sure it was of the time.
Yes.
The sets were incredible. Like the
Costuming,
cars,
yeah.
the scenes on the street where they had the cars and the shops and everything. It was, you could tell they had a really big budget. You really get to dive into that time when you see like the old cars and like the costumes and all
Totally.
these things. But then the second they start talking and they say things like,
Ever just shut the hell up?
This is nuts. Get your game faces on.
it's just like,
No
wait,
one
what?
would've said that.
Or
Yeah.
they play a Janis Joplin song. Why is there music from the 60s, you know, in a film that's supposed to be taking place in the 40s? It's all very disconnected to me.
Yeah. There's a lot we can say, so let's focus on like the queer
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay, diving into the queerness of it all. So, as we said before, it is very historically accurate that there were queer women playing in this league.
Yeah.
And that representation was awesome to see.
Yes.
There were multiple players on the Rockford Peaches that were queer.
Yeah, which is like very cool. Like
Yes.
we can't take away the fact that like this series was like created by a queer woman. So it was so queer. Like there were so many queer characters and all
Yeah.
of that. But also like that being said, we still have like, you know, I think high standards and expectations
so.
that like that's not enough for it to just like be really queer. Like it also
Yeah.
has to be good. It also has to be really good. And what we were hoping was that it would be really queer and also really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like,
mainly
well done.
the kind of supporting queer characters, we would love to see more,
Yeah.
just more exploration into those characters.
Yeah.
Who are they? What are their backstories? What's their deal?
Yeah.
We spend so much time on other storylines
Yeah.
in this that, you know, Lupe and Jess and Joe, like, we don't really get to know them
No.
as people, and they're just kind of there as like
Accessories.
sidekicks almost.
Yeah. Right off the bat, you see these characters and you're like, oh, these are the ones that are queer.
What about you? What's your type?
Blondes?
Oh, I have one.
Like, I want to
Yeah.
know. I want to know what their deal is,
Yeah.
but you just never really get to know them, and I found that so disappointing.
Yeah, like this is an ensemble piece, you know?
Yeah.
The movie was very much about the team, and like we learned so much about all of the players on
Yeah.
the team, and I felt like we barely got to know a lot of the people in this series, and yet there was so much time to explore them.
Especially to bring in more diversity and more
Yeah.
representation, and to have, you know, a more diverse array of characters, but then to not spend time on them
Yeah.
feels like a disservice. So really, like, on the one team, like, a lot of the time, most of the time is spent like on this central love story, which is between Carson and Greta. And I was not thrilled about that love story in general, which I think is another reason why I wish we'd spent more time on everybody else.
Of course, there are historical accuracies that, like, being
Yeah.
queer in the 40s would have been very difficult.
Yeah.
It would have been very difficult and fair. There was also, I think, a lot of queer joy for those players
Yeah.
getting to live in a house with a bunch of women and be able to date them, whether that was in secret or not. I mean, even secret relationships can be happy relationships.
Yeah.
Especially at a time where you can't be openly out.
Right. And like, this central love story was very much one we've seen so many times in queer romances between women. It was the classic, you know, one of them is married, doesn't know they're queer yet, meets the other woman who's like a little more experienced. They have this affair. She cheats on her husband. It's very like kind of toxic at times.
Stop it. I not like you. Stop.
What?
I'm normal.
It's just like, we've seen that done over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, that is the story that we literally always see. And so I just didn't love it. And I also just felt like there was no chemistry between them. Like, I couldn't get excited about it, and I really wanted to. And they just, like, all their scenes, I felt like they were just sort of like arguing or just like maybe kissing. And I was just like, do we get any more? Like, is this it? I don't know. The queer love scenes are important.
Well, and like with all those other supporting queer characters,
why didn't we get
we
any
didn't
of
see
that?
any of that. We saw them at the bar. We saw them talking.
Yeah, and
flirting,
truly so
but-
many of them felt like very PG. And then I was like,
Yeah.
well, maybe that is just because the rating of this show is, you know, lower and whatever, and so nothing's going to be explicit, and like, that's fine. But then there's a scene between a man and a woman that's far more explicit than any of the queer scenes, and then I
Yeah.
felt like, oh, so it's not a ratings issue. You're just not going to show two women doing that. But why not? Because that's what all the queer people want to see.
Give the queer people what
Obviously.
they want.
Right?
By far, we've talked about this, of course. Our favorite scene that does kind of give a glimpse of that queer joy is when they're in the bar, in Rosie's bar.
Yes.
Carson, look around. Okay?
You finally see, you know, these players
Yeah,
comfortable
being
and happy,
themselves.
and they're
Yeah.
just they're queer, and they're out there at the bar like flirting with other women and things like that, and
Yeah.
they're not thinking like, if am I gonna get caught, or oh, my life is so hard, or
Yeah.
I need to be careful. They were just happy, and
Yeah.
they were just being themselves. And you know, of course there
There
was
gonna be more
that,
to that, yeah.
and that would be accurate.
Yeah.
And I just felt like we didn't see enough of that, because I think that
Totally.
is really important to showcase.
Totally. That was by far my favorite scene. But it comes so late in the series. Like, it gets so far into it where I was just like, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, this is what I've been wanting to watch. And it's just so brief. And, like, we just didn't get enough of it. Obviously, having Rosie O'Donnell in it was so cute and, like, a cool
Yeah.
callback to the original. Like, that was so cool. And I would have loved more of that for sure.
Yeah.
So obviously we hate nitpicking like the queer stories of this, because again, like, it's so cool that this got made. It's so cool that it was made by a queer woman, and it's so cool that there is so much queer representation in it, and in a story where like we didn't get to have that in the original. But with that being said, I just feel like there's so much more queer representation now in general in film and television, and so I feel like we as a community, it's like our standards have kind of changed.
The bar
and now,
has been raised, for
yeah,
sure.
it's like now
And
we,
it should
we want
be.
to start seeing different things. Like, that main love story, it really was very cliche, and you know, we want to see more queer joy, and we want to just see more diverse stories, and you know, like it's not enough for it to just be queer anymore. Like it also has to be like really thoughtfully done. And so I think our expectations for this were just maybe a bit higher than they just weren't quite met, I would say.
So I'm sure you know the structure of the show if you've seen it, but basically there are these kind of two parallel stories because, as we know, at the time, Black women were not allowed to play in the league. So instead of just saying, oh, Maxine, you're not allowed to try out, we're never going to see you again, we did actually get to follow her journey as well when it comes to baseball and when it comes to exploring herself and her identity, which we actually really preferred. We really loved really that side of the storyline.
Yeah.
We thought that the characters were much more developed. We learned a lot more about her friend Clance.
I loved the dynamic between the two of them.
They were awesome.
My favorite characters for
there was a clear goal of like what Maxine wanted, and she was working toward it. There were ups and downs with her and her friend and her family.
Yeah.
And
just lots of backstory. We just knew a lot about her, like the dynamics with her parents and everything.
All of the characters.
Friendship.
Her parents were more well-rounded.
Yeah.
Her friends and even the people, you know, at the factory working.
Yeah, we learned a lot about everyone.
A lot more than we did with the Peaches.
Yeah, so I found that half of it, which is like the new part, like that's diverging from the original film, obviously. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was so well done, and I just kept wanting to go back to it. I wanted to spend more time there, rather than with the Peaches and with sort of that central love story that I just never really got into. I thought they did a really good job with Maxine's story, and just really interesting stuff, like the whole story with her uncle and like reconnecting, and like it was just very queer. It was very interesting. I think it's obviously so important to show the stories of like Black queer women from that time.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of anything else that's done that.
Yeah.
So that
also,
really did it for us.
And also, you know, Black women playing baseball, because there would have been, you know, very few opportunities for them to play because, of course, the Women's League was not allowing, it was never integrated.
Right.
Whereas the men's leagues did start to integrate in the late 40s. So the Women's League ended up going until I think 1954, and it was never integrated. So Black women never got to play in that league, but they were playing in men's leagues.
Right.
And so when she does get to play with that team at the end, that is actually historically accurate as well. That would have been realistic, that women would have been playing on the team, which is really cool to see, and something that people probably wouldn't think of.
Yeah, that's the only thing I will say, actually, is that I would have loved to see more baseball in Maxine's story. Obviously,
that's a general through the whole show.
The whole thing, for
baseball.
sure. Yeah, and like for her story, it makes sense because, as you said, like she couldn't have played in the Central League, which is obviously super messed up, but the whole 8 episodes, we really never get to see her play, and it's like we know she's really good, and I don't think she ever actually like plays baseball in a game until the last episode.
Right.
So I would have loved for there to be just more ways to see her be an athlete. That would have been more exciting, I think, to me. But
yeah, overall, we absolutely love that this got made. I think it was something that, you know, we've been waiting for a long time, and of course to see the representation that the first film didn't have was huge. In terms of the players in the league, these women would have been a lot younger. Yeah. And you know, they would have been maybe like as young as 15, I think the youngest
player was 15.
In the actual league. What also took me out of it a little bit was seeing actors who were in their late 30s playing these roles.
40s even. The two main characters in like that central love story are both around 40.
Right.
And in the original film too, like a lot of the actors are in their 30s, but I feel like they're playing a lot younger, and it is suggested and implied that these characters are a lot younger, because if you think about it, these were young women whose young husbands were off at war, and the youngest players were literally teenagers, so they would have been really young.
I don't know that 40-year-olds were playing in the local leagues and then getting recruited to go out and play in this league. I don't think that's super accurate. So for me, I probably would have liked to see just younger players in general, and of course, like, I don't want to nitpick on age or anything like that, and I think that there definitely could have been the opportunity to like have them just play younger, and you know, the actors could still be older, but it definitely felt like they were older, and I think that central love story as well maybe would have been a little bit more convincing if we had two people who were a little bit younger and more clueless about life.
Yeah.
And then that kind of like back and forth roller coaster of like,
makes a bit more
why
sense.
are you changing your mind all the time, or why aren't you secure in these decisions? It's like, I think it would have made a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why we preferred Maxine's story, was because
Yeah.
she seemed younger, the
Yeah.
actress was younger, the character seemed younger, so because she's kind of figuring stuff out and like figuring out her queer identity and all that stuff, like it made sense because where she was at with it in her life, like still living with her parents, and like it all just made more sense. Whereas I feel like Carson and Greta, it just didn't play like the way I feel like they wanted it to, because Carson, I feel like they sort of wrote as this like, you know, young, impressionable, like figuring out her identity for the first time, figuring out she's queer for the first time, like all this stuff, but she was married, and she had obviously been married, I think they said, for like 7 years or something.
Yeah.
Like she was obviously older, and the actress is older, and she just didn't seem young.
Yeah.
Like casting yourself in a project that you're not necessarily the like well suited for, you're not necessarily the best choice for, and then like casting your best friend to play your love interest. Whereas like Maxine felt cast perfectly, like she was the perfect actress for that role, and so it made sense.
And I think the supporting cast too. I think the casting of the supporting cast was solid.
Yeah.
You know, and
even some of those actresses were like, a lot of them were in their 30s, but like they all played young, and those characters seemed younger, and it made sense because, like you said, these were young women going off for the first time, like, and a lot of them would have been like discovering themselves, and like
the first time being away from home, probably like the only opportunity women at that time, at that age, would have had to just go off and live in a house full of women and like just get to explore themselves and their identity and like kind of understand what they want in life. And what an amazing opportunity. And there's so much in there in terms of like juicy storylines that, you know, I would have loved to see.
Totally.
And kind of going into a season 2, which they are planning for, I think, you know, there's a real opportunity to kind of dive into those stories a little bit deeper. And I don't know, as much as I had my reservations about this season, I think that they can maybe learn from some of their mistakes moving forward and possibly do a better job for season 2. So personally, I will still watch season 2. Maybe they could get rid of that CGI baseball and just let them play.
Honestly, I don't know that they would change that much, because I think that like critically the show has done very well. I feel like we are maybe the only lesbians who aren't like super excited about it from what I've seen online. I feel like everyone really loved it, which like totally valid, of course. And the only criticisms I've seen have been like from conservatives saying that it's like too progressive and blah blah blah. And obviously I don't agree with that at all, but like our criticisms are, you know, sort of completely different than that. So I do expect another season would be very similar. So I don't think that it'll be something that we like, you know, rewatch over and over again. I'm sure we'll still go back and rewatch the original film because we love it so much. Probably tonight. So yeah, I don't know. I think we'll kind of just see what happens.
Bottom line, we want to see more baseball.
Yes.
We want to see real baseball.
Yes.
We want to see all the queers and all their stories.
Yeah.
Give us these diverse queer stories that we crave.
We, as a community, have been waiting for so long to finally see these things on television, you know? So, like, give us more and make it be good. And obviously, if you watched this show and you loved it, that's fine. Like, we just, you know, these are our feelings, and this is just how we felt about it.
Also, tell us why you loved it, because I would love to hear all the perspectives.
Totally.
If you loved it, tell us why. If you hated it, tell us why.
Yeah, unless it's because you thought it was too gay, because we like that it was queer.
We like the queerness.
But yeah, we would love to hear your thoughts, and like no shade to anyone who really enjoyed it, of course. And again, we're glad that this series got made. It's really important that it happened and everything like that. So
yeah.
Okay.
All right. Dirt and skirt.
Thank you for watching. If you want to see more film and television reviews, let us know, because we love watching the film and television. We love watching queer film and television. We could talk about it literally all day. This is what we do at home by ourselves.
We love to
each other.
analyze. We love to overanalyze everything.
Yeah, so if you want to see more of this, we always have opinions. We always have thoughts to share, and we'd love to do more videos like this. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to see more videos from us, and we will see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.